He came to the States as a director of a biotech company and stayed despite having the option to go back. During his 15-year stay in the States, he's been president of 3 biotech companies and board member to a few. My guest this week is Frederic Chereau, an immigrant from France whose career was heavily influenced by his dad and his wife. He's known among his friends and colleagues for one attitude. In this episode, he talks about his attitude, his secret, his immigration journey, his obstacles, and how his accent impacted his career. So go ahead, grab your cup of tea, and join me in this episode of Empowering Conversations. Hello and welcome to the Empowering Conversations podcast, a place to get inspired, challenged, and empowered by stories of immigrants who build their success from zero. I'm your host, Mehran.
I'm born in France. I was born in France from a French family. And honestly, we were interested in travel, but not so much in long-term travel and immigration or expatriation. So very French, I would say. But at some point in my career, I met some international people, and obviously it triggers some curiosity from my side about learning more and about other people and more than what you can learn during just a trip, a vacation trip or business trip. I didn't start really my career with Genzyme, but it was my second company, and Genzyme is an American company based in Boston, in Cambridge, and focusing on rare diseases and with very special people with the highest commitment to patients I've ever seen in my overall 25 years old career in healthcare. Genzyme was not a very big company at the time. I think we were like 30 people in France, maybe less than 300 people in Europe, all over Europe, and then a couple of thousand people in the US. And so I had the opportunity to come here more and more, and my job took me to Boston and to the US in general on a regular basis for a few years. And then I was thinking about one day, why not working at the headquarters, you know? And I've been lucky that one of the first physicians was thinking about using some human cells, from the thigh, from the leg, to re-inject them in the heart of some patients with heart disease to potentially defeat heart failure, was a French guy. Genzyme was very interested in cell and gene therapy at the time, and they asked me to link up with this guy and see if we could do our project together. And we did that, and it became a bigger project at Genzyme, became a joint venture with another large company. And at the time, they offered me to come to the US to continue to grow the project I've been started out of Paris originally. So that was a trigger in some ways. I have to say I've been very fortunate because my wife was also very interested in this type of experience. We were having a happy life in Paris. We had 2 kids. One was 8, the other one was 2. And we were like, Paris is a wonderful city. Working there is a nightmare, but you can enjoy all the Parisian life that you can see if you travel to Paris. But so I have to say, without my wife, I'm not sure I would have made the step. And because there is always a difference in between you want to do it and you do it. And I think she has been the little sparkle in my life. It's beautiful to say that. She has been the little sparkle in this expatriation. So that was in 2005. So, you were asking me about the challenges, right? Well, I have to say, it's a very nice expatriation. Actually, I started with this status they call in companies expatriate, and so Genzyme treated me very well. So compared to other immigrants in this country, I have to say, I've been super, super fortunate, and that's something I will obviously remember all my life. Nevertheless, I think moving to another country brings challenges. And I remember one guy I was respecting a lot. Actually, he was my wife's mentor. He told us when you change something in your life, don't change too many things at the same time. And it's an advice I've been following a lot. And if you change job, don't change wife. Or if you change wife, don't change language, the work language. I'm kidding a little bit here, but change can create some imbalance. And you want to make sure there is not too much imbalance if you want a chance to be successful. Here I was staying with the same company, I was staying with the same type of job, but the language was different, and it was a little bit, I wouldn't say I was scared by that because I was going up to the US once a month and my English was decent. It's not exactly the same than you have to be working in English all day long. It was originally one of my challenge, my accent, and my goal when I came in was like, you know what, in 3 months, I will speak like an American guy, like a Bostonian, We are 15 years after, and as you can hear, I'm not. But now I would say I gave up, and I think it's part of who I am. Well, the other challenge, there are not challenges, big challenges, I would say, but I was thinking about that before our discussion, and obviously it's a different culture, everything is organized in a slightly different way. And when you are, as a very French person, you don't understand why things are not organized here as they are in France sometimes. I'm talking about the way you walk through a supermarket, or the administrative process you have to go to or not. Some things are much easier here. Many things, I have to say, are much easier here. But the way people interact with each other also, it's kind of a challenge. People are very friendly in the US compared to France, but maybe sometimes you don't go. You can surface a relationship very quickly, but to go deeper, it's a little bit more difficult. And for us, it has created. It's not a challenge. It's more took some time to get used to it.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious because you mentioned the accent, and that's something that many immigrants face. They always have that, they set that goal for themselves to speak in accentless English. Have you ever felt that that was a barrier for you in your professional growth?
For my professional growth, maybe not, but to be able to say some professional experience, specific ones, maybe yes. And non being a native English speaker sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, I think, at every level, I would say.
Can you share with us some of those challenges?
Well, when you apply for a job, and it depends who you are talking to, but I've been very fortunate to come here as an executive in a very successful company. But when I decided to leave this company and talk to others, I met some people who I'm sure believed my English was not good enough to represent the company, or my accent was too strong, although very charming, but too strong to represent adequately the company. I'm not sure I faced it directly, but in a retrospect, I would say I can see some events in my life where I may have not been given the same opportunity because my English was not absolutely perfect.
Mm-hmm. So it might have been true, it might have not, it might have been, but that's something that you felt could have impacted you at times.
A little bit.
Yeah. Sometimes we immigrants set high, unrealistic goals for ourselves. An example is the idea of speaking an accent-free English, as Fred mentioned. We are fearful. Fear of judgment. What would others think of me if I speak with an accent or if I make grammatical errors? I have invited guests with amazing stories who declined the interview because their language was not perfect. And it saddens me. It makes me think of all the other opportunities they turned down because of their language. Coaching tip. Do improve your language. Do reduce your accent actively, but live your life meanwhile. I always say to my clients, it's not your English accent that limits your growth. It's the relationships you don't make because of it. How about a recent challenge?
So I told you I came for this company called Genzyme. And here I had 10 wonderful years. They treated me, very well. I had the opportunity to grow in the organization. I've been given a lot of opportunities and so on. I didn't leave Genzyme because I was unhappy. I left Genzyme because I'm very much an entrepreneur, I think. I don't fit very well in large organizations. And when you are living in the biotech industry in Cambridge, there are so many biotech opportunities that it's difficult to resist at some point. And also, when it was time for me to leave, I remember my father, who told me many times he wished he had started this company and he never did it, because there is always a good reason not to do it. Your kids are going to college, something can happen in your family, or another opportunity in a large corporation. And at the end of the day, it was at the end of his professional career, looking backward and said, that's something I haven't done. So I was about 40 years old when I had this opportunity to leave Genzyme to join a startup company, and I think it was the right time to do it. The first big challenge I faced is I left Genzyme a week before the crash of the Lehman Brothers Bank in 2008. So before the world fell apart, and when you go to a private VC-backed company with not a lot of funds, when the market is not good, it makes your life very, very difficult. So as somebody who has never been a CEO, never raised money, never been on the top of an organization, which means there is nobody upstairs you can go to when you have a problem you don't know how to solve with. I have to say it was a pretty intense challenge, which has been emotionally and physically intensive. At the end of the day, what I've learned, there is always some light at the end of the tunnel, and our goal is to find this light, and that's been difficult for the company I joined. We nevertheless, we had to take some very difficult decisions, such as asking people to leave the company while their performance was good, but it was just because we didn't have enough funds. And it was, for me, one of the most difficult things I ever had to do. And nevertheless, we survived. It was very, very much surviving, being on furlough, not being paid full salary for a while. But we've been able to attract investors' interest, refinance the company, redevelop new project, and very fortunately, a few years later, the company got acquired by a larger company. So that was one challenge. Another one I'm facing now, I'm still the CEO of a company. We are now a public company, and I've been with an outbreak. It makes obviously everybody's life very, very difficult. 1 hour would not be enough to list all the challenges I'm facing. But I think my previous experience taught me a lot, and maybe taught me some reflex that I've taken as soon as the shelter in place started, and which I think allowed us to be in a good position today, and hopefully stronger at the end of the outbreak than we were even at the beginning. Interestingly, some decisions were very questioned by my team because we couldn't see the sense of urgency. And that's the reason why I say maybe what I've lived before, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, helped me a lot to react quicker than I would have reacted if I've not gone through this type of difficult financial environment.
So let's say I joined a startup, or I've started a startup recently, just like how it happened for you in 2008, and all of this happened with coronavirus outbreak and all the challenges that we're facing, and it might impact me and my company. What are some lessons that you could teach me based on your previous lessons to survive it?
I think one thing we say in this country a lot, which would apply very well to your question, is cash is king. And I think when this type of things happen, it's very important to look at where your current resources will be able to take you. And since with COVID-19, we still have no clue how long it's going to last and what the overall economic impact will be on the United States, but the whole world, you know. So I think being in full control of your resources at this time is definitively an advice I would give you, you know, and trying to expand the runway of your resources in the best possible way. And sometimes taking difficult decisions, as I said before, would be maybe my first recommendation.
Mm-hmm. We all have regrets in our life. Do you have any? You don't.
Of course. I think fans.
Because okay, so we all have regrets in our lives. Do you have any regrets that now you look back and say, I wish I did this instead, or I wish I did this more or less of?
So I wish I did this instead. I don't think I have many, and nothing comes to mind, because I think what you do, the decision you take at the time, is fed by your experience and the data you have at this time, you know. And so looking backward and said, I wish I would have done that instead of that, is not, in my view, very valuable, you know. I mean, it's life. And from the decision I've taken, which was the best decision at that time I could take, I'm more interested in trying to extract the good things, you know, I've learned. And coming back to the example I was talking about a little bit earlier, I wish I would have not left Genzyme in a very comfortable position a week before the crash of the Lehman Brothers Bank. I think I would not be the same person I am now if I would have not done it, you know. But the wish I would have done more of that, yes, I have, you know. For example, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, because we are not reminded enough that we should take as much time as possible with people you love while they are there, you know, because when it's gone, it's gone. One thing you cannot retrieve, it's time, which has passed. So yes, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids when they were younger, you know. Maybe also slightly different time with my parents when I was younger and they were younger. But I mean, is it a real regret? I think regret is a very strong word, and maybe it's some translation issue here. But even in some other negative experience I've taken professionally, for example, I always try to look at, keep the positives with me and learn from the negatives. Maybe I was a little bit like that before I came to the US, but I think that's something I've very, very much learned about this country too, is keep going, there is something better further.
Looking back 25 years ago, when you started your journey, basically your professional journey, did you ever think you would be where you are today?
I don't think so. Before I started my professional journey, I knew, so I'm a physicist by training, so nothing to do with biology, which is what I'm dealing with for the last 25 or 27 years, whatever. I knew at the time I wanted to work in an environment where science, some type of science, would bring some value added to the product, whatever the product is. I ended up in the healthcare industry a little bit by serendipity. One night, my father didn't feel good. I was living in his house. I called the emergency. A physician came. He asked me to drive him to the hospital. He was having a heart attack. Then he got taken care of by the physicians at the hospital. And because I was very interested in learning about what was going on, I reached out to a lot of my friends who were at the time in med school and said, this is what the guy told me, this is what I read on the bedside, and so on. Tell me more. And I think it has been one of the events in my life when a few weeks later, after applying to a sales rep job in a medical device company, I said, you know what, versus Xerox, which was at the time a great company and very well known to be a great sales training company, or I had an opportunity to go to a yacht company, sailing boat company, and it was one of my passions at the time. I thought this event took me to the medical or healthcare industry. So before that happened, I didn't know. So it's about the field. And as I told you also, my encounter with Genzyme was also a life-changing experience in my view. Being able to bring a drug to patients and family who have one day discovered, one of the child was having a disease. It took multiple years to finally be able to put a name on this disease. And that the minute after you put a name, you learn that there is no treatment. And if you can contribute to what happens after, I think it has been to me a life-changing experience, and it's still my motivation to go to work every day. So that's something I didn't know I would be driven by 25 years ago, and same for the US. As I told you, I love France. I was very French. I love the food. I love the wine. I love you know what I've been missing a lot from France, we don't have here too much, is this social dinners with friends for hours around the table. We call that we are redoing the world. I'm not sure the impact of the discussion is huge, but it's playful, it's warm, it's a lot of friendship, can last very long at night. We've been able to recreate here with some French people, but that's something which is not embedded in the American culture, in my view, the way it is embedded in more Latin culture, like France and maybe Spain and Italy.
My next question is about how did being an immigrant or expat impact your management style?
That's an interesting question too. So I came to this country as an expat. I became an immigrant, and about 2 years ago we became citizens. So I had the whole journey. I am not sure it has any correlation on my management style. So it's a little bit like culture, When you move to another country, you come with your culture and you experience another one. You come with your management style, which could have been working well or not, but hopefully working well in your previous country. And if you try to apply it directly that way to a new environment, it might not always work. So I definitively had to change my management style. I'm not sure I've changed it enough because I know it could take a while for some people to fully appreciate it. But yeah, the fact that I moved from one country to another gave me the opportunity to expand also my management style, to be more versatile in what I can offer here. And one very, typical example is, in France, we never tell people when they do good things. The good thing is the base. It's only when they do exceptional things, which does not happen all the time, that you spend some time to tell them. And in the US, it's not exactly like that. You need to tell the people that what they have done is great, but it's good, but they can do better. And that's something. It took me a while before I've been able to give positive feedback before negative feedback. And it was not negative feedback. It was like an improvement. And I've learned now you need to tell 5 good things before you say 1 thing to improve. I'm still struggling with that a little bit. I hope I became much better, but I'm still struggling with that a little bit.
That's really neat. I think coming from I'm Iranian in origin, so that is, we're very direct and quick to point the negative and what could be improved. So I could see how could that be difficult, moving as a director, and having a team. For many cultures, it is hard to hold back negative feedback. You know what I mean if you've been managed by someone from Russia, Germany, or Israel. Of course, we're generalizing here a little bit, right? But As Fred pointed out, he needed to make certain changes here in order to manage multicultural teams. As managers, we have to understand how to give feedback. And as employees, we have to understand how to receive it. Coaching tip. If you're an employee managed by someone who's culturally different, understand their culture a little bit. And don't take things personally.
So what advice would you give to someone who is a minority and wants to be where you are?
The first advice would be believe. Believe in what you want to do, and something will happen. Might sound very candid, but there are people who have said, do what you like to do, and you will have the feeling that you are not working every day. Or other people have said, pick the right thing for you and you will become very good at that, and many opportunities opens for you. And that's what I mean by believe. One day I was on vacation and it was in a hotel, and one of the guys from the hotel was showing us the stars, and he had a long telescope and we could see the stars, and he was very knowledgeable. And at some point I said, how did you learn? I mean, it's incredible. You know a lot about the stars. He was the hotel guy, and everybody can learn about the stars, but because it was his passion, And he said, yeah, I know a lot, but nothing next compared to this guy and the guy next to me. And I said, why does he say you know more about the stars? And he said, well, maybe because I've been to the space 3 times. And the guy, so I had a discussion with him, and he told me, that's something I really wanted to do. And I wrote to the guy who has been the first one to walk on the moon, Armstrong. And he replied to my letter and he said, do what you like to do, you will become a world expert, and one day you will have the opportunity to go to the stars. And the guy studied like crazy. He liked engineering, and then he added up a degree in medicine. But he applied, what was amazing for me to hear, he applied, I think, 23 times in a row every year to the NASA program. And it's only on the 23rd one he got accepted. And that's for me, and that's a story I say very often, because to me, and not because I met a guy who went to the star, but very much because it's, if you believe in what you want to do, if you demonstrate enough passion about it, one day it will happen. And if it's not exactly the version of your dream, it's going to be a version of your dream, which I want to believe will be nevertheless fulfilling.
What do you think makes you who you are?
Well, I think it's many things. It's I've been lucky to meet great people who have been great mentors, and that's always needed to push you up a little bit. I think I've been also lucky to be given this opportunity. So people claim it's not only luck, you search for them or you create them. That's true, but sometimes luck helps a little bit. And but I think what has helped me to be who I am, and it's always very difficult to talk about yourself, I think, but I would say maybe resilience. If you ask my people around me, what is one word which would create, would summarize me, besides humor, I hope they would say that. I'm not sure it's good humor. They would say some kind of humor. But I think resilience, or it's not stubbornness, it's more being strong and resilient and resistant at trying to achieve the goal you want to achieve.
Wow.
Stop saying wow, Mira. There is no wow.
I'm going to edit them out. Who do you think influenced your life the most?
It depends which part of my life and at which cycles, but my father has been, my parents overall, but my father has been a big influencer, as well as my mother, my wife, my kids, the mentor I've been lucky to meet during my professional careers. They are the big influencers.
How do you choose a mentor?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure you choose a mentor. It's. I'm a believer that there is a lot of chemical reaction in people's interactions, and sometimes you meet people, and very soon after, you know that you want to meet him again, and you want to go deeper in the questions. And if there is the same chemistry on the other side, I think that's when you start to create a stronger relationship, and then maybe take it to a mentorship type of relationship. And I don't think you choose. I don't think you choose neither to become a mentor, something which is happening because there is a good click in between the two people's personality, the two people's needs also, and things happen relatively naturally. I'm a strong believer in letting life and biology do things. I'm not attached, I'm not religious. I don't believe in any God, but I believe in human beings, and I think things are meant to happen in a certain way. My point is things happen in between human beings, good and bad sometimes, and we have a tendency to focus a lot on the bad sometimes because it's more hurtful. But opening your eyes and looking at the good things and the good relationship and trying to make it a little bit deeper, I think brings a lot to people.
You still have mentors?
Yeah, I couldn't live without mentors.
Oh, you couldn't live without mentors?
I think so, yeah. I reached out to one no later than an hour before our call.
What stage in your life or your professional life did you start having mentors?
I think from the very beginning, when you start a job, and especially I'm coming from a country where when you are a student, you don't do a job. In France, it's a very linear education curriculum where you go to school and one day you say, school is over, go to work. And when you arrive there, it's a brand new, you've done a couple of internships here and there, but it's very different. You're by yourself. And so from that day, I remember the first guy I would consider as a mentor. I haven't talked to him for ages. He's retired now and so on. But as I said, I started my career as a sales rep. He was my sales manager, and he taught me many things, and which have helped me to be more successful, and from there led to something else. And I've always been in contact with all these people. In this case, it was in France, 1994. So I've lost a little bit track of him. But it's a good question. I will try to reconnect.
This was great. I truly enjoyed this conversation, and
Thank you.
Really appreciate this time that you've given me.
My pleasure.
You know what I loved about Fred? His humor. This was one of the most fun interviews I've had so far. And I think many of us can benefit from adding more humor to our professional lives. I personally have two distinct modes: the fun, humorous Mehran and the serious Mehran. The serious Mehran shows up at work and discussions. My life would be much, much, much easier if I could sprinkle some humor to my work discussions as well. What was your takeaway? What was your favorite part? Write it down and act upon it. I put a big smiley face in my office to remind myself of my new goal. What will you do to make sure you act upon your lesson? As always, thank you for listening and sharing our immigrant stories with your friends and your colleagues. You, my audience, mean the world to me, and I know I will see you and your friends in the next episode of Empowering Conversations, where all of us can learn from successful immigrants, one conversation at a time.